This week, our offshore fleet has been reporting a great bite from snappers near shore to pelagics in the Gulf. The lakes are keeping anglers busy with bass and crappie. So if you're looking for tight lines this weekend, sit back and enjoy. The Texas Insider Fishing Report starts now.
Welcome to the Texas Insider Fishing Report. Presented by Yamaha.
Welcome back to the Texas Insider Fishing Report, welcoming y'all into the month of August. We're your hosts, Bree Gabrielle and Captain Tommy Derringer, who's filling in for Rick this week. Welcome back to the show, Tommy. It's good to have you.
Thanks, Bree.
Ready to explore Texas?
Definitely ready. Definitely. Always here for a good time. Excited.
All right. Well, the school session is almost here. Crazy. So these next few weeks are going to be great to get the kids out and enjoy that last taste of summer. But the fishing is still just as hot as the temps. So let's check in with Dave at the workbench before we see who our first captain is. Dave.
How you doing?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Tommy's in here, so we're going to have him talk a little bit about catching redfish on the fly, because he does that a lot where he lives. So we're going to talk to some fellas in Texas and get what they say about what's going on and
all right.
do a fly fishing 101.
I love that. I'm going to be listening to that, Tommy.
I'm excited.
All right, first up, we have the Garmin Middle Coast region with Captain Bink Grimes, who has some offshore and inshore news for us. Get us started, Bink.
Yes, ma'am. We're waiting for our first real week of surf action. There's a lot of large shrimp on the beach and plenty of trout shadowing. It's too rough out there lately. August is usually that month we like to get out there in the surf. But until then, we'll just keep fishing places like East Matagorda Bay, where it costs up trout to 7 pounds this week while drifting. It's been an early bite for sure with the temps in the triple digits. Waders are working those mid-bay reefs as well. They've scored on bass assassins and topwaters. Along Surfside Beach near Freeport, you don't need a boat. There's miles of sand and fish that you can get after them on foot. Most are tossed to plugs and soft plastic and live shrimp. Waders around San Luis Pass are working 51M MirrOlure, soft dines, bass assassins, and the MirrOlure Little Johns. Deep reefs in West Matagorda Bay are holding trout on live shrimp under mid-coast popcorn. You got to have light winds to do it. We've had that lately. In August, traditionally one of those months where we just have a lot of light winds. Shell Island, Mad Island, Twin Islands are holding trout as well. But there's a lot of undersized trout out there, so take care of them, get them back in the water quick. Rockport waders, they've been tight to the shorelines early in the morning on corkies and small topwaters. Later in the day, they're falling off into that deep grass and those drop-offs along the ICW in about belly-deep water, and they're eating little bass assassin sea shad and MirrOlure Little Johns. That photo there's a nice 6-pounder this youngster caught and released. It was his first trout ever, and it's what a way to break in that kid. I mean, first trout ever, and he caught a 6-pound trout, and we awesome. They released her back to East Matagorda Bay.
Very cool.
We'll go redfish. Hey, there remains a lot of redfish in the surf. Most of those fish are tight on the beach in the first gut. If you're able to make a long cast, we've nailed a lot of good redfish on live shrimp. The Surfside Matagorda and Port O'Connor Jetty are holding large numbers of pogies and table shrimp, and those big old redfish are just right there right behind them. Waders along West Matagorda Bay, they're catching redfish off the grass line. Don't be surprised to find those redfish under birds on the shoreline on calm days. When those birds can see those shrimp jumping, they'll come down there and pick them up, and there'll just be redfish all underneath them. The end of the jetty at Matagorda hold lots of upper slot redfish on menhaden and shrimp, and those reds are following those gobs of pogies coming down the mouth of the Colorado River on that incoming tide. Port O'Connor and Port Aransas jetties are holding lots of bull redfish while soaking finfish on the bottom. Those incoming tides been best with fish to over 40 inches. Offshore, we'll go large. Schools of tarpon are showing along the beach in Matagorda, as they always do in August. That's because we get those large schools of pogies through there, menhaden, and man, they're just shadowing them, and there's just a lot of menhaden on the beach. They're fickle creatures. One day they bite, one day they don't. That's just tarpon fishing. The consensus of many of these tarpon anglers most of those fish are rolling and greyhounding in about 40 foot of water, just a few miles off the beach in Freeport and Matagorda. However, there's some 90-foot plus channel areas around Port O'Connor Jetty, and the tarpon have been there loafing, and it's been a really best early morning, early light bite there. Many of those boats are pulling at the tip of the jetty, they're waiting for those schools to roll. They're throwing a coon pop at them. They're throwing menhaden at them. They're throwing live finger mullet at them. There's also lots of Dorados showing along the weed lines. There's also cobia out there found around structure. It's just August. A lot of these kids are going back to school. A lot of the boats are getting off the water, and there's not as much traffic out there. There's not as much noise, so it's really, really nice early in the morning. But we'll continue to take care of our bays and beaches in the Garmin Middle Coast region. Here's hoping for a lot more southeast winds and emerald tides, and that's what usually August brings for us.
Thanks, Beck. Great report, man. Here are the MirrOlure hotspots from the Middle Coast region. The trout are biting while wading sand and grass in Rockport using Bass Assassins, and redfish are also biting at the Port O'Connor Jetty on shrimp and pogies.
All right, in the Upper Fresh region, we've got Lake Fork, Tawakoni, Athens, and Lavon ready for your weekend excursions. So let's get some details from Mike McFarland. Go for it, Mike.
Hi, Bree. Hey, it's good times on Lake Fork right now. Lake level is 39588. Some a little more than 7 foot low pool. Still 86, 93 degrees, and still 1 to 2 foot visibility. The bass are still being caught early and late. Most of the fish are caught early hours, or pretty much less than 10 feet. Early morning bites really the best. Topwater baits like Berkeley, El Chapo, the white buzz baits, small paddle tail swim baits. They're the ticket. Shallow main lake points with shell are the best locations. When I say shell, I mean shell bed. They're also pushing shad around the bridges, bridge corners, and bridge embankments, so just find the blue herons and you're in a good spot. A great way to also catch those fish is use your Garmin sonar to find the big schools of sand bass. Side scanning is easiest. Once you find those, throw like a ½ ounce or 3/4 ounce jig head, like a Revenge or a darter head with a shad-colored Bass Assassin. Let it sink to the bottom and snap it back real hard off the bottom. You can catch a lot of fish that way, including some of the white bass. But we're talking largemouths right now, big ones on Lake Fork. Another great way, shaky heads rigged with big worms. Best colors, watermelon candy, plum, and black magic, and even Junebug or Junebug red. Your midday bite is still slow. Man, I recommend you just take a nice nap, stay cool, hit back out in the evenings again about the last 2 hours of the day, and you'll find some good fishing. The evening bite, you really want to fish deeper, 16 to 20 feet. It really seems to be the key, more along the lines of the football jigs, the shaky heads with big worms, green pumpkin colors, and Carolina rig creature baits or Bass Assassins. Let's tell you about bass on Tawakoni. The Tawakoni bass are still being caught on frogs early and late around the lily pads and vegetation. You can also catch them on some small swim baits in the shad pattern colors. Once the sun's high, move to the rock piles and docks around 10 feet. Those shaky heads, Texas rig jigs, and green pumpkin, watermelon colors. Always dip those tails chartreuse in that chartreuse spigot. Athens bass. Water temperature is 89 to 92. Bass are schooling early and late. You kind of got to really run around the lake, chase them down with topwaters, rattle traps, underspins. You can also fish some of the points and humps with the Carolina rig creature baits, shaky head worms, and things like that. But Athens is a little bit slower than it's been. Lake Lavon, white and chartreuse spinner baits early morning. Once at 7:30 hits, go to the deeper water, swim jigs and swim baits. Then Carolina rigs midday around 10 to 20 feet. A lot of brush pile fish there too. But that kind of the gist of the bass fishing. So if you will, let's take you to some crappie fishing. We'll move back to Lake Fork with my favorite, Terry Moon. She said this week the target's really been between 18 and 22 feet on the edges of the timber, especially around the bodark trees. Check the areas that are adjacent to deep water. There's also a thermocline that's set in about 22 to 25, so try and fish above it with your minnows and your jigs just tipped with minnows is working well. Here's Terry again with some great fish.
Oh, nice ones there.
Yeah, beautiful. She's always on them fish. Lake Lavon crappie, looking 5 to 10 feet of water in the mornings. After 8 a.m., go to 9 to 17, 14 foot's a magic number, minnows and jigs. I also want to move quickly, too. I'm going to try and get you through some stripers, white bass, and then to some catfish. So let's talk about stripers, white bass on Tawakoni. Moderate schooling hybrids early in the morning and sand bass. Daybreak on the points, smaller slabs and tail spins. The big stripers are really showing up for Matt. Matt Cartwright's a great guide there, but he's getting those with downriggers on bigger swim baits, and they're suspended in that deep water. So here's a couple awesome giant fish that Matt's been catching lately.
Wow.
Yeah, they're big ones. They're big ones.
Awesome.
You know, we ain't got to talk about catfish in quite a while, so let's tell you, Tawakoni catfish, they've also moved out deep now. They're in about 15 to 25 feet of water. Cut shad's probably your best deal. You can also catch a few of those on the points and timber using punch baits and stink baits. And then again, we can tell you that Lavon's the same kind of thing, 10 to 20 feet. The baited holes really seem to be best for the channel catfish, but cut bait for the bigger blues. And Lake Fork, one last catfish lake. Lake Fork's on fire. If you'll just bait a hole in 15 to 20 feet, I mean like a creek swing or something, come back the next day with punch bait or dough bait, Jackie Wiggins says you will clean up. You literally can fill your limit in less than an hour on Lake Fork with those channel catfish.
Thanks, Mike. Hey, man, I like your suggestion of fishing in the morning then taking a nap at noon. That sounds like a good day to me. Now, here are the hot spots for the Upper Fresh region. Largemouth bass are biting in the Upper Fresh region lakes, the best being Lake Tawakoni. Bass in the 3 to 5 pound range are being caught in early mornings on frogs and buzzbaits located around the lily pads and shallow water vegetation. Now, once the sun is high, hit the docks and the rocks with jigs and Texas rigged ribbon tailworms in June bug and green pumpkin colors.
Man, we went fishing with Matt Cartwright on Tawakoni for some stripers maybe a year ago. They were nowhere near as big as those were.
Those are some good ones, man. Those look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we're headed south into the lower coast region. First, Dave and Tommy are putting on a show at the workbench for rigs and techniques for a little fly fishing 101.
Yeah, I can't even get the fly off. That's how good I am at it. I ended up hooking myself and the rod at the same time.
Oh, no.
He's going to show us how to use one of these things, man.
That's what he's here for.
I did catch a blue marlin on the fly once, though.
Not to brag. We'll be
Not
back.
to say, you know. I'm just saying.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. Fenwick. Feel everything. Bahio Sunglasses. Blue light blocking. Radically clear lenses. Garmin. Plot your paradise. Fibertex. Leaders in fiberglass fabrication and repair. Sportsman's Adventures. Fishing for adventure. Berkeley. Your fish, our science. And Skeeter Performance Fishing Boats. Eat, sleep, fish.
Dave, we're here at the Rigs and Techniques, that is, and we're going to talk about the buggy whip.
Yes, we are. Well, you know, that's why I, wanted to do this, because you were here, and I know that you like to do that almost exclusively. I know you pick up the other rods and reels, but you really like to do this.
I do. I enjoy having people on the front of the boat doing this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually, my boat's made for this. And
it is.
And I don't get to do it very often. Yeah, right. But anyway, what makes a redfish and the trout a great target for the fly guys?
There's a bunch of things, but one of the big things I think is you can be, as more and more people start to fish, you got to be more and more stealthy to catch these fish. So throwing a fly, something really small, really light, doesn't make a splash when it lands. If you can make that presentation, it's very stealthy. So you can use very small baits, small flies, which redfish and trout, as you know, they live on small crabs, small shrimp, little minnows. They do eat bigger baits too, but I think the majority of their food is going to be small, which is, it's hard to present something that's small with a spinner or a bait caster.
Right, because once something, weighs over an ounce or whatever, a quarter ounce even, hits the water, it does make a big splash.
Right.
So what kind of flies do you like to use when you're chasing redfish?
I think it's, whether you're fishing Texas, Florida, doesn't matter. The flies are pretty similar in a lot of cases because you're trying to mimic a shrimp or a crab most of the time for redfish, especially shallow water redfish, which I know you talked to some of the guys this week, and they were saying the redfish are up shallow early, chasing shrimp flies, or shrimp that is. So this is what we call a quan or merquan fly. It's basically a shrimp or a crab imitation. You use something with browns and tans. You can also use something, I like to use a little bit of green with the brown. You can put a little egg sac on there, but basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to mimic something to make it look like a shrimp or a crab, a crustacean. That's what they're up there doing. They're digging in the mud, looking for that kind of stuff. This fly you can make it as big or as small as you want, but a small version of this, like I said, it lands with no splash, and it just looks realistic in the water. It's really, they eat the heck out of it.
Once you make that cast, and you get that fly out in front of the fish. I assume you're wanting it to, 2 or 3 feet out in front of them.
Lead the fish a little, yep.
How are you, is it a strip fast for redfish? Do you do it slow, or is it different every day?
It's different, it depends. I mean, if the fish is not moving much, sometimes you don't have to move it much, but redfish tend to be pretty aggressive, so you can move it pretty quick, but I would say in general you're moving it kind of slow. You're just doing little ticks. Sometimes you have to play around with it to see what they like, but generally up shallow you're moving it pretty slow. A shrimp and a crab's not moving real fast anyways,
All right. So you brought this really nice rod and reel out here. What kind of gear are we wanting to use when we're targeting little redfish? I guess probably not 40 pounders, but smaller ones.
I mean, you can catch those big fish depending on what you're fishing around, but I would say in general, an 8-weight is probably the go-to for redfish and trout inshore saltwater fishing. Although if it's not so windy, you can go a 7-weight or even a 6-weight if you want to be sporty. And if it's really windy, a 9 or a 10 is not out of the question either, because that's going to help you make a little bit further cast.
Throwing heavier line.
Right, might be throwing a heavier line, or if you're throwing a bigger fly. But I would say 8-weight would be a great starting point. You're going to want to use, match the line, 8-weight line. If you're up shallow, you're using a floating line. A lot of these new lines have a tippet that's clear. Could be 10 to 15 foot of clear line, which can be helpful for spooky fish if you're in clear water. And then you can also get a intermediate line. If you're like later in the day, we were talking about it earlier, fish are moving to deeper water. You want something that gets down a little bit more. They make an intermediate line, which is going to sink a little bit, help the fly get down a little.
So, we were talking earlier about, how fly fishing, it kind of makes it harder.
It does.
It's almost like, putting a knife in your mouth and jumping in the water to me and running out there and trying to stab them. Because, I end up throwing a fly and end up laying in a pile of line a lot of times.
Yeah, I've done that too.
So, what's the cool thing about it? I mean, everybody likes to do it.
Yeah, there's a mystique. There's that mystique to fly fishing that it's kind of hard to describe it or really explain it to somebody until you've actually done it, especially if you tie your own fly. You sit there, you make your own fly, then you catch a fish on something that you actually made. There's just something really special about that. And it is difficult to do. It's not the easiest thing. But
you got to learn how to cast all over again, really.
Now you can go, if you go to your local fly shop, those guys are really into helping you out, whether it be tying your first fly or even just learning how to cast. Go to your local shop. Those guys are going to they'll hook you up. They want you to get out there and start doing it. That's the name of the game.
Before we go, I want to say thanks to Mason Majek. I called him today and he gave me a little bit of insight on some of the stuff we were going to talk about tonight. So go fly fishing with Captain MasonM.com, Mason Majek. And he fishes in Aransas Bay and San Antonio.
Yep, thanks, Mason. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Back to
Good
Bree.
job, guys. Tommy, you're my new fly guy. I'm ready.
You ready?
Yeah, I think I've got it. All right, the Lower Coast region is showing off its redfish, flounder, and grouper numbers, so let's see how Captain Chad Kinney is reeling them in. Go for it, Chad.
Tell you what, we got a good looking weather this weekend, which is great. Chipped is this weekend, the 5th and 6th out of South Padre Island. So there'll be offshore, inshore. We've been talking about that last few weeks, so hopefully people can get down there and check the weigh-in out. It's a good deal. So like talking about South Padre Island, it's holding its annual tip tournament this year. There's good numbers of redfish out around South Padre, all the way up to Mansfield, Roy City. And there's also been some good numbers of flounder coming into the weigh-in. I'm expecting a bunch of them this weekend. Normally our flounder numbers aren't up, but this season they've been holding pretty good. So starting out with the redfish, it's been pretty good out of South Padre. Go up to like 3 islands, Gaswell Flats, South Bay, of course, is holding some. And there's been some actually schools starting to show up, which is kind of a little early, and some smaller pods. When I'm talking about pods, pods are 5 to 8, 10, 15 fish in them. The schools are going to hold, 100, 200, up to 1,000 fish, and you'll definitely go see them. Especially run your shallow sport boat up early, look for bait, and definitely look for wakes pushing up. We're getting some calmer winds in the morning, so look for wakes pushing the water. That'll definitely give you an indication. If you're going up there early like that, I'm going to try some Mirror Lure Top Dog Junior. Like using that, especially when there's not a whole bunch of floating grass, which we do have a lot of it, but if we clear up there, use that Top Dog Junior. And if not, go to some saltwater assassins, paddle tails, use the paddle tails up shallow. And the day goes on, those fish are going to start moving off the flats. We always talk about this. You can go to that 3 to 4, up to 5 foot of water on the breaks where it's spotted bottom, which means, grass beds and sand pockets there. The jetty action's also been good, but it's not been real consistent. That's why I haven't mentioned a whole bunch of it, but the jetties actually are been producing some oversized reds and some pretty good slot reds also. So moving to the flounder. Flounder remains really good. We don't talk about maybe once or twice a year. This year I think we talked about 4 or 5 times at least. So work those guts from the ICW, we're out to the east cut of Port Mansfield, Port of Brownsville Ship Channel, work those drop-offs, get a 1/4 ounce to a 3/4 ounce, spin in the current and stuff, Eagle Claw jig head, get a fish bite attached to it, works really well, or a smaller soft plastic, working the bottom real slowly. You got to, be methodical about it. You got to repeat your casting, present it well, just bump it off the bottom, be really patient, but it'll pay off. I kind of like it when the outgoing tides are starting to go, and they start falling off those flats, off those edges in the dumps. When they first start, that bait's going to fall out with them. In those shallow areas like that, and the fish are going to start feeding, look for little shads and minnows or anything else, and sometimes you can see a flounder free jump almost. So try those going out the outgoing tide, and you'll have some better success on that. So got a buddy of mine, Eric Solis here, Sea Spray Charters out of Port Mansfield. You can see a picture here. He's got a picture, of course, red trout, but he's got like 20 flounder lined up, limited out on artificial there. He's just been hammering on them. So moving to offshore. Offshore action's really picked up good. Headed out deeper for pelagics at the 100 fathom curve and out to Colt and Oasis Dome. They've headed back in, or if it's kind of slow, down, deep drop for some grouper when it's calm like this. So grouper can be hard to target, especially with all the red snapper we got out there. They kind of attack the bait first. So one thing you do for the grouper is just go with what I call make a jig. Get your favorite jig. Don't bait it. Don't tip it. Don't do anything else like that. Get a Penn 6500 to 8500 spinning combo with a blue carnage rod. Spool it up with some 60-pound or bigger diamond braid. Just kind of bounce off the bottom from the bottom to 10 feet, 20 feet off the bottom, kind of drop it back down and repeat it. That way you can look for some scamp, gag, yellow edge, depending on the depth of water you're in. If you're targeting the Warsaw grouper, get a bigger bait like a bonita or a live blue runner and put them over on a conventional rod from a 50 to 80 wide Penn International with some heavier diamond braid, like at least 100-pound or bigger, and leave it on the bottom. If you're having some issues with some other stuff, or maybe getting some really big fish or taking you to holes and locking you down, then break out your hooker electric and some heavier diamond braid, and this will put the really heat on them. And you get them up, once you get them up to 30, 40, 50 feet, then it's a better fight and you got them there. Remember, it's one fish per vessel, so if you land one, kind of move off, go target different species. There's no reason to kill more than one of these guys. So I got a picture here of actually myself, which I never take a picture of, is a 200-pound Warsaw grouper.
Holy
dang,
moly.
Chad.
That picture
I'm getting old. I can barely get it off the dang floor of the boat, and my Yamaha Atlas about to pop off. But we're moving over to pelagics. That can get up to 100 fathom curve. We're going to be fishing for these guys during chip and deeper. Islander rigs with ballyhoo are really working good. Put them out in a 5 to 7 line spread. Keep your eye out on your bait, of course, and utilize your Garmin sounder to look for bait balls. Or your Sirius XM, which I've been really working with on the Garmin and the fish mapping. It gets you a better idea where to start, and this will also help you immensely on some weather which we've been having out there for storms, if they're holding lightning or not, kind of where to fish. You combine them all, and it really improves your odds out there. So, again, tips is this weekend. Hope to see everybody out to weigh in, and y'all have a good time. Look to see you this weekend at South Padre.
Thanks, Chad. Here are the shallow sport boats hot spots for the lower coast region. Inshore, redfish have been a good bet, and there's also been good numbers of flounder, like he was talking about, being caught from Port Mansfield to South Padre. And then offshore, the action has been good past the 100 fathom curve for billfish and other pelagics.
Gotta love Chad. I never take pictures of myself, but when my grouper's this big,
gotta
do it.
Gotta do that one, man.
All right, we've got the Star Charm Middle Fresh and Fish Bites Upper Coast regions coming right up on the Texas Insider Fishing Report, so stay hooked. And remember to keep up with everything fishing in Texas. Make sure to head on over to our website, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and to see new fishing adventures along with reports, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Captain Rick Murphy. We'll be right back.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Bass Assassin and Saltwater Assassin, the best lures, period. Island Lures, Tournament Tackle. Rodan, set it, forget it, catch more fish. Sirius XM Marine, weather, fish mapping, entertainment. Shallow Sport, Berkeley, your fish, our science. Murphy's Law Sport Fishing, book your trip today at murphyslawsportfishing.com. And Penn, let the battle begin.
Well, Tommy, I guess if you're upgrading, might as well do the whole thing, right?
Those gauges don't ever got to stop. I love that look.
Yep.
That's really cool.
Really neat. All right, Star Charm Middle Fresh regioners, if you like big bass, and you cannot lie, get ready for your Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn reports with Matt Losher. Tell us, Matt.
All right, Bree, I sure will. You know, this late summer heat has not stopped giant bass from biting here in the Middle Fresh region, especially, as you mentioned, on Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn. At Toledo Bend this past weekend, we had a tournament hosted by Game Changer Outdoors, and they showcased some impressive weights. My good buddies Cody Pitt and Lane Masters won that derby. They had a 3-fish limit that weighed 21.87 pounds. They also took big fish honors out of those 3 with an 8.94 pounder. So congrats on them on that impressive win. Just some really incredible fish, especially for this time of the year. We also had our youth bass camp here on Toledo Bend last week, and we had a fantastic group of kids this year. We got to share the boat with some great young anglers, and they all learned a lot and caught some nice fish in the process. We can't wait for next year to do it again. And, you know, this week, but what went down mainly was a deeper bite with some bigger fish starting to really show up. You know, that water level's come on down, so that deep late summer bite has really heated up. Most of these big fish are coming from about 17 to 25 feet of water. Typical summertime baits, we're using Texas rigged worms, Carolina rigs, and jigs to catch them. And there is also a shallow bite to be had, but the size just isn't quite as good. So that shallow bite's in about 1 to 10 foot of water in the back of the creeks around the stumps and the shallow grass. Once again, it's Texas rigged soft plastics. The Bass Assassin Little Skunk Ape has been great for that bite. Green pumpkin has been the best color, and dip the tail in chartreuse. I'm also catching some on a square bill crankbait in shad colors back there in that shallow water. So it's kind of a tale of 2 bites here on Toledo Bend. We got a shallow and a deep, but not much in between. And I've got 2 photos here for you of those fish that I was just talking about. The first one there is Cody Pitt and Lane Masters with their winning catch. And then the other is Tucker, one of the kids from our bass camp this past week, with a 7-pounder there that he caught with his guide, Mr. Marshall Hughes. So great catches there, guys. Awesome. Congrats on all those. Now I'm going to move over to Sam Rayburn. There were some giant fish weighed in over there last weekend as well. Rusty's Team Tournaments hosted an event there last Saturday where Wesley Baxley and Mackenzie Green won with a 3-fish limit that topped the scales at 22.32 pounds. And they had their bag anchored by a 9-pound hammer. So, you know, congrats on that incredible catch, guys. I'm sure that's one you'll remember for a long time. Just some really impressive weights coming out of that lake, too. At Rayburn, the baits, once again, they're nothing out of the ordinary. Lots of fish being caught offshore on Carolina rigs, football jigs, and big worms. I'm not hearing as much about the crankbait right now as I was in weeks past, but it is still always a player in the summertime. You know, you can always potentially catch a big one on that big plug, so don't forget about it. And then as for the shallow bite over there, there's a lot of fish being caught over the hydrilla. It's mostly in the morning, and it's mostly smaller fish. So if you're looking for some early morning action, kind of drive those numbers up for the day, you can definitely get up shallow and have some fun around the hydrilla. But most of those bigger fish are coming out deep. Now moving farther west in the Middle Fresh, things have been extremely dry and hot once you get kind of west of Sam Rayburn. And unfortunately, that heat has really put a damper on the fishing. But some are still out there wetting the line. And one of those that is Mr. Thurman Selman with Bass and Specialty Guide Service. He's on Richland Chambers. And if you want to get on some good fishing and learn how to beat the heat this time of the year, go see Mr. Thurman. He is always figuring out how to catch some fish despite the tough conditions. And he tells me that Richland Chambers this week is about 6 feet low, and he's catching most of his fish offshore in 15 to 20 feet of water around brush. A Carolina rig is still his go-to this week with a big Bass Assassin 11-inch worm on it. But he did also mention that a jig has been putting some fish in the boat as well, and he's putting a Bass Assassin craw trailer on that. And he's been putting some fish in the boat with that jig, and like I said, it's really just about a big bait on Richland Chambers. So go show him a big bait, move it real slow, and you might get to stretch your string. Now switching over to crappie to finish out, the bite is picking back up a little bit here on Toledo Bend. You know, we went through a little bit of a lull there, but it's picking back up now. Our guides are catching better numbers again, out in 25 to 30 foot, 2 foot on live minnows, and a few on jigs. So good luck out there.
Thanks, Matt. Here are the Rodan Marine Systems hotspots for the Middle Fresh region. The bass are biting best on slow-moving baits in 15 to 25 feet, And crappie are biting a little better this week in 25 to 32 feet of water. They got to get down where it's a little cooler.
And stretch that string.
Stretch the string. Got to do that.
All right, from degrees to the fishies, you'll be feeling hot, hot, hot in the fish bites of the coast region. So let's check in with our Captain Carl Weston to find out what that hot bite is. Go for it, Carl.
Yeah, everything's hot here, Bree. The weather, the women, the fishing, everything's hot. But hey, the redfish bite is hot as well. Let's dive off into that. Our water temp in East Galveston Bay is about all the way up to 89 degrees, which is really warm, which means there's a lot of bait running to shorelines and jetties. People are starting to fish at night because it's so warm. And there's some really beautiful slot reds being caught in these areas, too, along those jetties and shorelines. As you know, we still got some CCA tagged redfish out there that have not been caught, so get out there and get on them. Get you one of those. Sabine Lake has a bunch of big schools of reds as usual, and definitely you can chase those around. You'll see the birds, you'll see the oil slicks. Back down in Trinity Bay, Texas City Dike, they're producing some very nice sized redfish as well. I hope it sounds like a broken record. The upper coast is just hot right now for fishing. That's on shrimp on a popping cork, artificial. Light color topwater roll like a Mirador, Miradine, and broken glass is just really doing well. We have a picture today of Cindy with a big redfish. And so we'll move from reds right over to trout. Down a little closer, say Sabine, it's further east. They've been getting a little more rain. The water temp has bumped up to about 81. It's a little cooler there in the ship channel. And the fishing has been really good in the 2 to 4 foot range. Over on Bolivar, the fish have been chasing bait along that north side of the jetty. So live shrimp on a popping cork has been the bait of choice there. Back down to Trinity, looking at the trout, like I said, look for the birds on the flats. Assorted plastics like Bass Assassin and Fish Bites Fight Club are producing some really pretty fish, guys. We got a picture today of Manny and Mario with a really nice stringer.
Oh.
Woo.
So, guys, let's jump offshore. We know we're getting towards the end of snapper season. We've got a couple weeks left. But as we do wrap up the red snapper season, remember that we have anglers, in the Upper Coast, there's plenty of other snapper to target. We have beautiful mangrove here, lane snapper, vermilion are thick in some areas. And they are mostly in the same target where you're targeting your red snappers. So there's a few tips to cover tonight that will definitely improve your chances on these smaller but just as tasty snapper. Mangrove, we've got, a little different in that they hang out much higher in the water column. And, so if you're fishing around some of the surface structures like oil rigs, sometimes you can chunk some shrimp in there, live bait, live shrimp, free line under there. It's amazing how you can pull them out away from the rigs. We use a piece of fluorocarbon, piece of diamond with like a 5/0 eagle claw hook. That's my favorite setup. Bumping over the lane snapper, they're going to back on the bottom on cut squid and shad. Old trash piles and pipe in the 80 to 160 foot range usually got those fish on them. Vermilion, they're going to mark on the Garmin machine. They look like a little umbrella-shaped cloud of fish over your rocks and structure, maybe 10 feet off the bottom. As we talked about in the earlier segment, smaller hooks, smaller baits can improve your hookup ratio. And don't forget to tip that hook with Fish Bites. I'm telling you, folks, it works every time. Here's Greg Jr. with a nice little lane snapper today. And bumping over from that to ling, we're 2 weeks into shrimp season here, and the boats are starting to get some fish collected up on them good. Takes a little while, dragging a few weeks, but they'll get a bunch of fish on them. Blackfin tuna, Dorado. Like I said, ling is our favorite fish to catch on them. As they're culling through their nets early in the morning, if you get up behind the boat and you throw out a little chum, you just be respectful, be safe. Don't get too close to these boats. These guys are, trying to make a living too. But if you toss some cut bait in there and just drift back a little bit, you'll see the fish underneath the boat. They'll dart out and they'll come after your bait. And I like to free line a live shad or a dead cigar minnow on about a 7/0 trocar. Or an RR bucktail jig is really hot as well. Ling can't seem to leave them alone if you tip it with like Fish Bites or pork, anything like that. But be patient when running boat to boat, guys. Give it a little chance. Some at least 10 or 15 minutes. Drift your bait back. Sometimes the fish are back a little further, but give them a chance. bring them close to the boat, and then the fun is on. Here's Nick with a nice ling today.
Yeah, that's a nice fish. Good eating fish there. Hey, I got a quick question for you. Go back to the snapper fishing real quick. When you're catching those mangroves, when you are you free lining that bait back there? I know that when I do it, you got to make it look real natural. If it's not just flowing back like the chum, it's not usually going to work real well.
Yeah.
No, exactly. You got to free line it back. That's why I use like a 20-pound fluorocarbon and a small hook. I try to hide the bait, and like you said, just let it flow back with the chum. They have great eyesight and they're picky.
Yep, that's right. All right, thanks, Carl. Great report. Here are the R&R tackle hotspots for the Upper Coast region. Inshore, chase redfish in East Galveston Bay at night. That's been good. You're going to toss a Miradine in the broken glass color. And then offshore, you're going to fish for snapper using free line live shad behind the shrimp boats, while chumming with some cut bait fish.
I know, I always get so into it, just staring at the reel, just trying to strip that line up. I'm like,
that's the mood right there.
And then all of a sudden, you just focus on that and you get a bite. All right, the Lower Fresh region is biting big next, but first, Dave is showing us some big stuff at the workbench for new products. Dave, what's the biggest thing you got?
Oh.
It's the smallest. That's okay. We'll take that.
There's an anchor there.
The anchor, I guess.
Great,
I don't know. This keel guard's pretty big.
Packages.
Got me there.
It's all good.
Yeah.
It's all good. I never get you.
You got me.
Those look good though. We'll take that. We'll take that.
They're sharp.
The Texas Insider Fishing Report is brought to you by Tin Cup Mountain Whiskey. Turn on the bite anytime. Tie on a Miralure. Abu Garcia, Fish to Win. Ameritrail, load, launch, relax. Fenwick, feel everything. Diamond Fishing Products, our reputation is on the line. R&R Tackle, from our tackle box to yours. And Startron, start, run, and store with Startron.
Today's Power Pole tip of the week is about using dual poles. Now guys, I love the fact that with dual poles, I can create total boat control. Now when I approach a dock, or if I approach a point or an oyster bar, everything is in the angle of my cast in most fishing conditions. So what I try to do is understand exactly the presentation that I want to make with my lure and set the boat up by so doing that. So what ends up happening is we can approach a dock, we can approach that oyster bar, and I'm going to put the boat so that I can compensate for the wind as well as the current. And dual poles allow me to do that. Most of the time, if you have a single pole, you're always going to drift down current or even downwind, or the wind might blow you across the current. So you don't have the total control that you have with duals. So keep that in mind, that with duals, you're going to have the total boat control, and that's today's Power Pole tip of the week.
All right, we got some cool new things to talk about here at the workbench,
yes,
do we?
Sir. Got some new products. First off, we're going to start there with the Gator Guards. TH Marine now owns Gator Guards. They just recently purchased Gator Guards. Okay. So this is the Keel Shield Keel Guard from Gator Guards. It protects your boat and the underside, against any damage from rocks, or you want to beach it up on the sand.
It feels heavy duty.
Yeah, you're cruising along and hit something, with the bottom of your boat. That'll keep it off. It comes in 10 different colors. It's up to 100 foot. If you got a great big boat, they make them big.
I see this being good if you like to sandbar it.
Right.
This would be great for just beaching the boat.
And then especially also, you don't like scratches on anything. So
right. I don't. So this would be good for that. And then also like oyster bars and stuff. This is
it's a peel and stick. You prep it, peel and stick that thing on there. It comes with a little kit, with all your little
prep it up,
the prep stuff, the adhesion promoter, and to scrape the hull clean. And once you get it on there, it's on there. It comes with a 3M product, that adhesive on the back, and it's made of in the USA 100% urethane polymers, and it's pretty nice. TH Marine, you can get one of those. Actually,
I can see that very handy.
GatorGuards.com. GatorGuards with an S.com. Next, and certainly not least here, we got the TH Marine.
Don't you use one like that?
I do, actually. I have a little tiny skiff, and this is the exact same anchor that I have in my boat. I use it because I like to stay really, really quiet, and I fish in really, really shallow water. And believe it or not, if this is sitting on the console next to me, I can just grab a hold of it and just put it in the water. I don't even have to plop it. I let it go while it's under the water, and it's
gonna be quiet because it's got a little coating on it.
Yep, incredibly silent. And this is great for mud or sand. It sheds the sand and the mud really good, so you don't bring a whole lot of stuff in your boat because of that coating.
That's nice.
Comes with 50 feet of 5/16 inch polypropylene line, a nice little hook there.
Quick release there.
Yeah, a little hook quick release. Actually, what I'll do is I'll wrap I'll wrap it through my my polling platform, and I'll tie little loops like 8 feet, 12 feet.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just put it through there and drop that thing off and put it in that loop, and it hangs right perfectly where I want it. Go to TH Marine to get the River Anchor kit. Pretty cool little thing right there. Next, I'll let you hold these so you can show them off.
This is some serious leader
material. Yeah, these are,
right here.
from Diamond Fishing Products. These are the Wahoo's high-speed shock leaders. And what you use with these are made from really high-tech monofilament, Momoy high-catch monofilament, from 150 pound all the way up to 400 pound. And what these do is they add a little spring when you're high-speed trolling for wahoo. You're going 18 knots, And
the fish is going
and a wahoo's
really
going
fast.
just as fast in the opposite direction. He comes and slams into that thing. If you're using pure braid or even pure mono, something's got to give.
Right.
And what happens is that mono gives. It's a nice
fish's mouth gives a lot of times.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You want that little stretch.
Exactly. It has diamond ball bearing tournament snap swivels, all diamond stainless steel thimbles inside, Momoy sleeves. All the best stuff. Because you don't want to lose a wahoo, and you
don't get a ton of bites when you're wahoo fishing.
Correct.
Typically, you want to catch them when you get the bites.
You want to catch every one you hook, and that's what that'll help you do. Diamondfishing.com to get your wahoo stuff.
These are cool.
Last but not least, I'll let you hold both of these. Watch out.
Be
these
careful.
hooks are incredibly sharp. I think those are the same hooks that they put on the Miradine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they're very sharp. This is the Paul Brown Miro Lure Maniac Mullet. Miro Lure owns Paul Brown. That little nose, that little nose and that hump makes that thing work like a lip. Kind of like, a rattle trap, it gives it that little roll down, and if you jerk that thing, it goes everywhere, and trout and redfish will love it. That little thing's like 4.5 inches long, weighs 5/8 of an ounce, so you can throw it a good ways.
Yeah, it's got a good little heft to it.
It's soft. So, when they bite it, and if they don't, they're going to grab a hold of it and not let go. They got over 10 different color combinations. I
could imagine just about everything eating this. It looks like a mullet.
Redfish, trout really love it.
Yep.
But, just give it that little jerk,
it's
and
it's going to have some good action.
It dances all over the place. So, go to shopmirolure.com to get you one of those Maniac mullets.
Very cool.
And don't get too close to them because
super sharp. All right, Dave, thanks a lot.
Good job, guys. You're jubilating over there.
Jubilating.
You got to bring some Rick into this, all right? Yep. Jubilating is his word.
That's his word.
All right, it's time to listen up for the Lower Fresh Region anglers, because we've got Choke Canyon, Falcon, LBJ, Decker, Fayette County, and Somerville showing some size and numbers, but early is the key as always. Talk to us, Matt.
All right, let's get it rolling. I'm going to start off down at Falcon. The bass are biting extremely well down there. Our water just keeps falling and falling. It's as low as I've ever seen it. It's definitely been lower before, but in all my years, it's as low as I've seen it. The fish are relating to the rock drops and brush piles. With the low water levels that we have right now, there's new rock ledges coming into play. They're coming into that 15 to 20 foot depth range. So you want to check some new spots every time you're out. Texas rig worms are best in the brush piles. You can also catch some bouncing crankbait through the brush when you have worked it over with a worm. That'll trigger a few extra bites. The rock bite has been best with a stand-up head with a big straight tail worm on it, or a football jig. Lake Decker is fishing very well. Work the edges of the grass and the brush piles with a 5-inch soft plastic worms or jig to get the big bites out of them. A deep crankbait will also get some good bites. If you see some schooling bass, surface schooling, be sure and have you a little swim bait handy to throw into the action. That's a great way to add a bunch of fish to your creel during the day. LBJ is also kicking out some fish. Early, you want to work the shallow vegetation like the lily pads that are close to the bulkheads and such.
You're getting some good bites on frogs, fluke-style baits, and other, stick bait, soft plastics. Later, you're going to skip a jig or a finesse worm way back under the docks in the shade. There's been a lot of big fish coming out from under those docks. Also, check out the deep rock piles with a shaky head trick worm or drop shot. Fayette County has been fishing pretty fair. Swim jigs and bluegill patterns have been good early around the grass. But the main bite's still the deep schools out on the 15 to 20 foot deep ledges and points. There's been a good group of them in the intake, and out on what's called Rick's Hump. They're still catching a lot of fish there on a half-ounce shaky head or Carolina rig. Also is catching a few fish on the big flutter spoon out there. That'll get them fired back up, and you can get some more bites on your plastics. Like Summerville, the key has been really early. Poppers around the walking banks, top waters around the rocky banks have been best early in the morning. Later move out to the deeper brush piles with a Texas rig, Carolina rig, even a half-ounce jig has been, kicking out some fish. Green pumpkin, black and blue, and June bug have been the key colors in the plastics. One of the best bites at Summerville now has been the night bite. To get to during the nighttime, you're going to throw a big worm in a dark color, or also Colorado bladed spinner baits. Choke Canyon is having the same issue as the rest of South Texas. Water continues to fall really fast, and the grass gets shallower every day. But there's still a real good topwater bite for the first hour or two in the morning. Most of them are 2 or 3 pounders, but every now and then a big old 5 to 9 pounder shows up. Wind and clouds definitely help that bite, and after it ends, moving baits are still producing around the grass till around 10 or 11, but then it's really slowing down. At that point, you want to get your heavy braided and, braided line, big weight Texas rig to punch through the matted hydrilla to get the bites for the rest of the day. Got a couple of bass pictures there. That's Mike Bates with one of the fish, and that's the 2 fish is some of his clients there from Choke Canyon this week. He's been really kicking out quite a few fish, 50 or 60 fish days is what he's been having.
Man, great. That's a lot of fish. That sounds really fun. Sounds fun. Well, thank you, Matt.
Talk about that. Let's roll on to some crappie. Falcon Lakes, crappie are biting really well. Best place to find them is in the man-made brush piles. Right now, we're also starting to catch some out of the trees that are coming into depth. The old natural trees that have been underwater since the lake was impounded. They're coming into that 15 or 20 feet of water, and some fish are using them. Get you an 1/8 ounce jig and drop it vertical into the trees is the best way to get to the fish and not get hung up. Limits of big old crappie have been pretty easy to come by. Got one picture there of just a couple hours worth of crappie from a trip about last week sometime.
That's a nice haul there. Thanks, Matt. Here are the FiberTech hotspots for the lower fresh region. Choke Canyon continues to kick out bass. The early topwater bite is extremely good around the hydrilla. Walking style plugs and poppers are producing. Fish a frog over the thick hydrilla to draw some great blow-ups. That's a lot of fun. And later in the day, get your heavy braid and punch that hydrilla with plastics to keep on catching.
We talked about ICAST 2 weeks ago when Rick was here.
Yeah.
What was one of your favorite things you saw at ICAST, product-wise? Just one. Your most favorite.
I like the new Bahio sunglasses, the new styles.
They won.
They did. They won for one of their styles. They made some for some big pumpkin heads like I got. So
what is that style then for big pumpkin heads?
These are the Vegas.
The Vegas.
Yeah, they're very comfortable.
Vincent Vega.
You don't have a big, he on the other side has a peanut size.
They got those size too.
And your pumpkin, peanut, I guess mid-grade head, I don't know. Yeah. I'm a mid.
It's a lot of brains for the big one.
They're using that word now.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Go out and catch the big ones, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for being here, Tommy.
Thanks for having me.